set of documents.
Stop, and we've lost control of one item. You know, here's what it is. Here's what it is. Are you alright, sir?
Yeah, my flat wanted to see what's happening.
2 years ago, some of you will remember the police began conducting an extended, multi-force warrant at my address.
Yeah, it's my flat.
This is your flat.
Yeah, it's my flat.
Seemingly with the belief that I had regulated explosives in my flat for an unlawful purpose.
Here's the letter from Cambridge City Council seeking the injunction. Didn't sign it. Notice of injunction. Even more pages. Okay, chemical list.
We're not going to go through all of this.
Mercury fluoride, which one? Ball bladder containing unknown gas.
This contained just my breath because I was just blowing it up for fun and I left it like that. Interestingly, nitrogen is not absorbed by the body through respiration at all. Nitrogen is essential for life, but we get this from food. There were lots of repeats just to bulk it out, I guess. Made the list longer than it should have been. Non-existent and misspelled. This was just the first 2 pages.
Mercury toxic oxidizer. Zinc chloramati. Yep, that doesn't exist. Synthetic cannabinoid. Aluminum hydroxide aloha. Acutely. Synthetic opioid inert. Poor man's chemist.
Just want to thank him because he wrote an excellent letter for the police. I had quite a few letters of my own to write at that time. This was 2 years ago, almost.
To Senior Antisocial Behaviour Officer.
Professional Standards Department, Cambridgeshire Constabulary. Subject: formal complaint concerning multiple incidents between 2018 and 2025. Dear Professional Standards, I am submitting a formal complaint regarding a series of incidents involving Cambridgeshire Constabulary spanning several years, culminating in 2025. These incidents raise serious concerns regarding the lawfulness and necessity of arrests under Pace Code G and Article 5 ECHR, disproportionate or unjustified use of force and powers, mishandling and destruction of property and exhibits, discriminatory assumptions, and breach of the public sector equality duty, misinterpretation and criminalization of lawful scientific activity, invasion of privacy and overreach in searches, including breaches of Article 8 ECHR, provision of false or misleading information to third parties, including Cambridge City Council, failures in accuracy, record keeping, Code C, Annex D, and transparency. Non-compliance with data protection legislation, UK GDPR, Data Protection Act 2018, breaches of the College of Policing Code of Ethics and related professional standards. I set out the relevant matters below. A male officer assured me upon asking that he would hand-deliver my seized phone back to me once it was no longer needed. Trusting in this, my phone was destroyed without prior notice or adequate explanation, just that a deadline for its collection had passed. This was without my knowledge. This amounted to breach of property handling obligations and expectations, failure in honesty and reliability of assurances given, breach of code of ethics, unnecessary loss of important personal data and evidence. This behavior showed a lack of respect for my property. In September 2023, I experienced what I consider to be the clearest and most serious example of police misconduct. Before this incident, I had spoken with front desk police staff at Parkside. They informed me that people would be on duty on a specific upcoming date, which reasonably implied that if I wished to raise concerns about how my previous case had been handled, I could attend the station on that day. This information was volunteered by police staff. It was not discouraged or framed as inappropriate. On that date, I attended Parkside. The waiting room was very busy and had no available seats. I identified myself to the front desk and informed staff that I was present. I then sat on a public bench directly across the road from the station. My actions were entirely visible, open and lawful. The following morning, officers forced entry into my home and arrested me on suspicion of stalking an officer. The alleged basis for this arrest was that I had supposedly said I would wait around the back for PC to finish work. I did not say this. At no point did I express any intention to wait around the back, nor to approach private time or personal capacity. The wording attributed to me is highly specific and carries a serious implication that I intended to approach an officer off duty in a private context in a manner suggestive of pursuit or predatory intent. This implication is entirely false and incompatible with my actual behavior. This allegation has the characteristics of a malicious allegation designed to justify police action, given that I was acting on information provided by police staff, that I remained in a public place in full view, that I used the front desk as a point of contact, and that I have never threatened or behaved violently towards any officer or member of the public. The allegation that I intended to wait around the back for her to finish work does not resemble a misunderstanding. It resembles a constructed and potentially fabricated narrative that portrays lawful, reasonable conduct as something sinister. This raises serious concerns that 1. The allegation may have been deliberately fabricated or knowingly misrepresented by one or more officers or staff members. 2. There was a failure to verify the allegation through basic means, e.g. checking CCTV, confirming with the staff who had spoken to me considering my actual location and conduct. 3. The supposed necessity for a forced entry arrest under Pace Code G and Article 5 ECHR was not met, as there was no evidence that I presented an imminent risk, nor that voluntary attendance or alternative investigation methods would be inadequate. 4. The allegation and resulting arrest created an unfounded narrative of me as a danger to an officer, when in reality I was attempting to resolve matters through communication and fairness. This single incident has caused the greatest damage to my trust in the police, and has had severe emotional and reputational consequences. It is, in my view, the most urgent matter requiring investigation. 6. Misinterpretation of YouTube footage and second arrest for planting a bomb. Same period, 2023. On the same day as the above events, officers viewed a video on my YouTube channel. The video shows a city worker in protective gear performing routine maintenance on a manhole. Officers assumed this worker was me and inferred some kind of bomb-related activity. No member of the public reported any concern. The suspicion arose entirely from police misinterpretation of my online content. Later that day, my home was searched and, while still in custody, I was arrested a second time on suspicion of planting a bomb. The search located only small quantities of chemicals such as sulfuric acid, nitric acid, and highly dilute picric acid solution, which were kept for legitimate home chemistry and educational purposes. These are commonly available chemicals, purchased over the counter or online, and were not combined or stored in any way indicative of explosive intent. At the time of purchase, I was unaware that certain substances required an explosives, precursors, and poisons (EPP) license. When I later became aware of this, I was effectively barred from contacting the police for advice due to restrictions imposed following the stalking allegation. I asked my solicitor to contact the police on my behalf to seek guidance and regularize any licensing issues. She agreed, but, to my knowledge, did not follow through. The escalation of lawful home science activity and misinterpreted footage into a terrorism-related suspicion was excessive, unsupported by evidence, and has had a chilling effect on my ability to pursue legitimate scientific and educational work. 7. January 2024 Home search, false and inaccurate chemical list provided to Cambridge City Council. In January 2024, police executed a further search warrant at my home. I was later provided with a list of chemicals and items allegedly found. This list was highly inaccurate and unreliable. It included chemicals that do not exist, numerous misspellings and mislabelings, archaic chemical terms no longer used in modern practice, repetition, quality as well as quantity exaggeration, with misleading descriptions. For example, 3 barrels when what I likely had was 200 grams. Forgive my vagueness on this as I can't verify anything precisely. Suffice to say, in the context of a container full of something, I don't own any of what people tend to think of as a barrel. That's if they mean a hollow cylindrical container that bulges in the middle, often used when transporting or storing alcoholic beverages. Granted, the term barrel could be used informally just to mean a large amount, but again, these words are relative. To accept the meaning behind such a description in blind faith would be to have already reached the conclusion it serves to embellish. What they might call large amount, one could reasonably account for as a humble, sensible amount just to have to hand in the lab sitting on the shelf, likely to be consumed after 3 or 4 different small-scale preparations. Just as an example, one could keep 200 grams to 500 grams of copper 2 sulfate for any time a soluble source of copper ions is
needed.
Copper 2 sulfate is a go-to starting material for countless copper-containing species. The sulfate can be easily precipitated out in place of another counterion. Many of copper's compounds, from simple inorganic salts to organometallic complexes, are colored. It could also be used to electroplate some copper onto a substrate, perhaps to make a time-lapse of it for a YouTube video. Or better yet, slowly grow a crystal. Then perhaps make a video about different crystal lattices, the unit cell, different geometries and properties, the effects of doping on a lattice, semiconductors, and so on. Forgive me if to you this is outside of the ordinary, because to me it is mundane. When it comes to hazard mitigation, sensible storage and handling protocols and awareness. In the case of ether, for example, there is the potential for unwanted autooxidation product, an explosive peroxide, to accumulate from long-term storage if oxygen is present. Ether is especially prone to this. Its low viscosity makes it easy for oxygen to penetrate and diffuse into it, and it has a weak CH bond right next to an oxygen, so is easy to abstract radicals. This is sped up by sunlight. With its UV photons having enough energy to knock an electron out of its orbit, it can create both oxygen and ether radicals that together react to form peroxy radicals. When the peroxy radical is protonated, you get ether hydroperoxide, which can slowly convert to diethyl ether peroxide and various explosive polymers. To avoid this, ether is kept in amber bottles. I kept a piece of copper wire in my small 250 milliliters bottle of it, as the copper surface will quench any radicals. The auto-oxidation process cannot be completely inhibited, but it can be greatly slowed down. If the ether is several years old, be careful, but if it's no longer a fresh bottle, it can be redistilled to regenerate and bring the danger clock to 0. With the appropriate knowledge, the risk to myself or people around me is no higher than the risk last person you saw riding a bike getting hit by a bus. I would as always be present with a solution for anything from a runaway reaction to something perhaps getting too hot and boiling over, or a glass stopper popping due to overpressure, or something catching fire for a brief moment. This sort of thing can potentially happen, but that's about as exciting or dangerous as it gets. Crucially, it was alleged that I possessed carfentanil, synthetic cannabinoids, synthetic opioids, stiffnic acid, a high explosive. I have at no time possessed any of these things. I have little to no interest in preparing explosives, and would not be so stupid to commit any nefarious chemical act to require attention from law enforcement. The spending of hundreds of thousands of pounds and the significant person loss of monetary investments, reckless and unnecessary damage to items of sentimental value, LL, and as anxiety this investigation has caused, MR, shows a kind of irrational hysteria about amateur chemistry. The closest thing to a drug that I've synthesized is a platinum compound that happens to have use in the chemotherapy field. It was also claimed that I posed a danger of radiation to children at a nearby nursery and threat to the public. These statements were completely untrue. Despite this, The list was provided to Cambridge City Council as though it were factual. Relying on this information, the council attempted to impose a Community Protection Warning (CPW) and sought an injunction against me. This ignored the council's own prior understanding with me, which recognized that I could possess certain flammable solvents in a secure metal cabinet and carry out small-scale home chemistry safely. Instead, I was accused of repeatedly refusing to stop my activities, upsetting neighbors, being antisocial. These assertions were false and appear to have been a direct consequence of the inaccurate, exaggerated, and misleading information provided by the police. I refused to sign documents containing such serious inaccuracies. When the matter was brought before a judge, I wrote beforehand to explain these problems. The judge declined to grant the injunction and instead ordered an undertaking that I not conduct chemistry at my address or on council property. I complied fully with this undertaking. Given that no charges were brought and the allegations contained in the list have not been substantiated, I request that Cambridgeshire Constabulary formally notify Cambridge City Council that the earlier information was inaccurate and should not be relied upon going forward. 8. Search of my mother's home, disproportionate warrant, invasion of privacy and mishandling of property, April-May 2025. Because of the above undertaking and bail conditions, I ceased doing any chemistry at my own address. With my mother's consent, I cautiously continued my hobby and educational work at her property, taking care to act safely and lawfully. In approximately April-May 2025, while I was abroad on holiday, police obtained another warrant to search my mother's home, again based on suspicion of homemade bombs. The search went far beyond what was necessary and proportionate. Over an extended period, around 2 to 3 weeks, officers occupied my mother's kitchen overnight, had ongoing access to the house while she tried to accommodate them, entered her private bedroom without her knowledge or permission, went through her drawers and personal belongings, seized her laptop, tablet, laptop charging brick, and several USB sticks containing family photographs, non-evidentiary property. My mother was not told at the time that these items had been taken. She only discovered the losses later. Her tablet was eventually returned but was damaged. This intrusion into her private space and seizure of non-evidentiary property constitutes a trespass and a clear breach of the scope of the warrant, and Article 8 ECHR. All of my chemicals were again seized, despite the fact that they were typical laboratory and educational reagents, in quantities and forms that did not plausibly suggest bomb making. The scale, duration, and intrusiveness of this operation were disproportionate. My mother's privacy was breached, and her trust in the police was badly damaged. There has been no satisfactory explanation and no compensation for damage and loss. I was later simply informed that no charges would be brought. 9. Mishandling of exhibits, arrest on return from Spain. On a subsequent occasion when I was arrested upon returning from Spain, multiple items were seized. However, only one item was initially recorded by the arresting officer, even though my camera was also taken. When I queried the whereabouts of my camera, I was repeatedly told that no camera had been seized. Several days later, I was informed that a camera had in fact been taken into police possession. This discrepancy indicates non-compliance with exhibit logging procedures, unnecessary distress caused by the apparent disappearance of a valuable item, further erosion of confidence in property handling and record keeping. 10. Subject access request, extended non-compliance 2025. In April 2025, I submitted a Subject Access Request (SAR) seeking copies of information, CCTV, and documentation relevant to these matters. At the time of writing, approximately 5 to 6 months later, this request has still not been fulfilled. When I have chased for updates, I have been told that the department is inundated and that my request cannot be prioritized. While workload may explain some delay, it is not a lawful justification under the Data Protection Act 2018 or UK GDPR. The prolonged failure to comply with my SAR raises serious concerns about transparency, record-keeping, and accountability. 11. Autism awareness, systemic failures, and wider risks to the autistic community. Cambridgeshire Constabulary has been aware for some time that I have high-functioning autism, and at times an appropriate adult has been offered or insisted upon during interviews. However, this is not the central issue of concern. My complaint is not that I personally required special measures or that such measures were missing. Rather, the problem is that many officers appear to lack even a basic practical understanding of what autism is and how autistic traits manifest in communication, stress responses, and behavior. During one interview, an officer explicitly stated that she did not know what autism was, and I have no reason to believe this was unusual. Throughout the incidents described in this complaint, autistic traits such as literal communication, difficulty processing sudden interpersonal changes, visible distress during confusing or unjust situations, and attempts to seek clarity have been repeatedly misinterpreted as hostility, evasiveness, rudeness, or guilt. This reflects not a personal failure to comply, but a systemic failure of officers to recognize autistic behaviors. This systemic failure may also constitute a breach of the Public Sector Equality Duty, Equality Act 2010. More importantly, this lack of awareness is not simply a problem for me individually, it poses a risk to the autistic community as a whole. There are numerous well-publicized cases where autistic people have been restrained, dismissed, ignored, or placed in danger because officers misunderstood their behavior. In some cases, this has had tragic or fatal consequences. Given that autism awareness training has been emphasized in legislation and policing standards since the early 2000s, it is deeply concerning that officers still appear untrained or unfamiliar with the basics. The National Autistic Society played a fundamental role in ensuring that police autism training became a statutory expectation, yet the lived reality for many autistic people, including myself, suggests that this training is not being completed or is not effective. My experiences reflect this broader pattern. Misunderstandings escalated situations that could easily have been diffused, resulting in unnecessary distress, disproportionate responses, and misuse of police powers. This is a systemic issue and a serious matter of public safety affecting autistic individuals across the community. 12. Overall impact. Taken together, these events have caused severe and ongoing anxiety, damage to my reputation, a significant loss of trust in the police, disruption to my scientific hobbies and educational work, distress to my family, particularly my mother. Additionally, without myself telling anybody what was happening, a rumor circulated that I was the bomber of Ross Street.
We've got written on our head.
The only people who knew the details of the investigation were the police, and I had disclosed nothing myself. This strongly suggests that information or insinuations originated within the police or were shared inappropriately, causing reputational harm and distress in my local community. Despite this, I have cooperated fully with police on several occasions. For example, providing a victim statement and helping to identify a violent offender who was successfully prosecuted. I remain willing to cooperate with lawful, fair, and transparent policing.
Here's what you've already been told. We're conducting a warrant at your address, and I understand you're staying at your mum's at the minute.
He's a good boy. You's a good boy. Who's a good boy? You are. He's a good boy. Daylight come and I am a good boy.
Requested outcomes. In light of the above, I respectfully request 1. A full professional standards investigation into the lawfulness and necessity of each arrest under Pace Code G and Article 5 ECHR, the use of forced entry in the September 2023 arrest, specifically the potential for malicious allegation or fabrication of grounds, the destruction of my phone, despite an assurance of hand delivery, breach of code of ethics, the creation and dissemination of an inaccurate and misleading chemical list to Cambridge City Council, potential misconduct in public office, the conduct and scope of the January 2024 search of my home, the lawfulness and proportionality of the search and seizure at my mother's home, including trespass into her bedroom, seizure of her personal/non-evidentiary property, and damage/loss, breach of Article 8 ECHR, the behavior of the custody sergeant who refused to let me leave until I proved I did not have certain contact details, exhibit handling failures, particularly around the seizure and recording of my camera upon my return from Spain, the repeated escalation of lawful home chemistry into bomb/terrorism suspicions without adequate evidence, failure to recognize or understand autistic traits so these are not perceived as intentional abuse, breach of public sector equality duty. 2. Completion of my outstanding subject access request in full without further delay, in accordance with UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. Failure to comply will be formally escalated to the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO. 3. A written apology acknowledging the specific harms, errors, and breaches of professional standards identified in this complaint. 4. Confirmation that officers involved in my cases and frontline officers more generally have completed the required autism awareness training in accordance with national standards. This request is not for personal measures, but to ensure autistic members of the public are not placed at unnecessary risk through misunderstanding or lack of training. 5. Formal notification to Cambridge City Council clarifying that the earlier chemical list and associated allegations provided by the police were inaccurate and should not be relied upon. 6. Referral of appropriate aspects of this case to the IOPC, where the seriousness of the conduct, particularly around the September 2023 stalking and officer arrest and the false or misleading information provided to third parties, meets the threshold for external investigation. Yours faithfully,
was quite hard. You know, we don't think that, but we've got to stop making it illegal. So we would rather he was, like the local officers, try and get some sort of connection with like the university or college, right? To try and say, come and do chemistry here, not here, with us. He's got to engage in that, but that's what we like. Yeah, so they will come down in his cell tomorrow and sort of start that conversation. I genuinely don't know what that looks like because it's nothing to do with me, but that would be start that conversation. I genuinely don't know what that looks like because it's nothing to do with me, but that would be the plan. Yeah, and that's what it is. And also, you can do